Is World War III already underway? It's a question that sends chills down our spines, a thought we try to push to the darkest corners of our minds. Yet, it's a question that was recently posed by Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JPMorgan Chase, one of the world's most powerful financial institutions. Speaking at the esteemed Institute of International Finance, Dimon didn't mince words. He warned that the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East could be the early tremors of a much larger earthquake, a global conflict with unimaginable consequences. His words, stark and unsettling, have sent shockwaves through the global community, forcing us to confront an uncomfortable possibility. Are we on the precipice of another world war? Dimon's concerns stem from the escalating tensions in two of the world's most volatile regions, Ukraine and the Middle East. The geopolitical landscape is fraught with uncertainty, and the stakes have never been higher. The war in Ukraine, sparked by Russia's invasion, has already plunged Europe into its worst conflict since World War II. The human toll is staggering, with thousands of lives lost and millions displaced. Cities lie in ruins, and the spectre of further devastation looms large. It's a conflict that has drawn in global superpowers, with the United States and its NATO allies providing military aid to Ukraine, while Russia, increasingly isolated, has ratcheted up its nuclear rhetoric. The international community watches with bated breath, aware that the balance of power is precarious. The situation is a tinderbox, and any miscalculation, any escalation, could ignite a wider conflagration. The potential for a misstep is ever present, and the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for the region, but for the entire world. Meanwhile, the Middle East remains a cauldron of unrest. The region is a mosaic of conflicts, each with its own history and complexities, yet all interconnected in a web of tension and hostility. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a seemingly intractable struggle, continues to simmer, punctuated by periodic flare-ups of violence. The cycle of retaliation and retribution shows no sign of abating, and peace remains an elusive dream. The recent war between Israel and Hamas, the militant group that controls the Gaza Strip, has further inflamed tensions in the region. The destruction and loss of life have deepened the divide, making reconciliation seem more distant than ever. The involvement of Iran, a sworn enemy of Israel and a key backer of Hamas, adds another layer of complexity and danger to an already volatile situation. Iran's influence extends beyond its borders, affecting conflicts in Syria, Lebanon and Yemen, and its actions are closely watched by both allies and adversaries. As the world grapples with these crises, the role of diplomacy becomes ever more crucial. Global leaders must navigate a delicate path seeking to de-escalate tensions and find lasting solutions. The shadow of World War III looms, but with concerted effort and cooperation, it is a future that can still be averted. Dimon's concerns go beyond the immediate crises in Ukraine and the Middle East. He believes these are just the tip of the iceberg in a much larger and more complex geopolitical landscape. He sees a broader geopolitical realignment taking shape, one that harks back to the darkest days of the Cold War. This new alignment is not just about military might, but also economic influence and ideological battles. He points to the growing alliance between Russia, China, Iran and North Korea, a quartet of nations often referred to as the axis of evil. This alliance is becoming more pronounced as these countries find common ground in their opposition to Western ideals and policies. These countries, each with their own grievances against the West, have found common cause in their opposition to the US-led global order. Their collaboration is not just limited to political rhetoric, but extends to military cooperation and economic partnerships. Russia, under Vladimir Putin, yearns for the restoration of its former Soviet glory. This nostalgia is not just a sentimental longing, but a strategic objective to reclaim its influence over former Soviet states and beyond. China, led by Xi Jinping, seeks to challenge America's economic and military dominance. With its rapid economic growth and expanding military capabilities, China aims to establish itself as a global superpower. Iran, ruled by a theocratic regime, dreams of exporting its Islamic revolution, Despite internal protests and economic sanctions, Iran continues to pursue its regional ambitions and nuclear program. And North Korea, a rogue state armed with nuclear weapons, remains a perpetual thorn in the side of the international community. Under Kim Jong-un, North Korea continues to defy international norms and pursue its aggressive military agenda. These countries, united by their shared animosity towards the West, pose a formidable challenge to the existing world order. Their actions and alliances are reshaping global geopolitics, leading many to wonder if we are on the brink of a new Cold War. The stakes are high, and the world watches with bated breath as this new era of geopolitical tension unfolds. Perhaps the most alarming aspect of this new geopolitical landscape is the spectre of nuclear proliferation. The world stands on the precipice of a new era, one where the threat of nuclear conflict looms larger than ever before. Russia, with its vast nuclear arsenal, has repeatedly threatened to use nuclear weapons in the context of the Ukraine war. This aggressive posturing has sent shockwaves through the international community, raising fears of a potential escalation that could spiral out of control. China is rapidly expanding its nuclear capabilities, investing heavily in modernizing its arsenal and increasing its stockpile. This expansion is part of a broader strategy to assert its dominance on the global stage, challenging the existing balance of power. Meanwhile, North Korea continues to test-fire ballistic missiles, each launch a reminder of its nuclear ambitions. Despite international condemnation and sanctions, the regime remains undeterred, further destabilizing the region. And Iran, despite international sanctions, remains determined to develop its own nuclear program. The potential for a nuclear-armed Iran adds another layer of complexity to an already volatile Middle East, where tensions run high and alliances are fragile. The proliferation of nuclear weapons, coupled with the rising tensions between major powers, creates a dangerous cocktail, one that could have catastrophic consequences for humanity. Diplomatic efforts to curb this proliferation have been met with limited success, as nations prioritize their own security over global stability. The potential consequences of a nuclear conflict are too horrific to contemplate. The devastation wrought by the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki serve as grim reminders of the destructive power of nuclear weapons. A single nuclear detonation would result in unimaginable devastation, instantly vaporizing everything within a certain radius and leaving behind a toxic wasteland. The immediate loss of life would be staggering, and the survivors would face a bleak future in a world forever changed. The long-term effects of nuclear fallout, including radiation sickness and environmental contamination, would be felt for generations. The health impacts would be severe, with increased rates of cancer and genetic mutations among those exposed to the radiation. A full-scale nuclear war, even if it didn't lead to the extinction of humanity, would plunge the planet into a nuclear winter, a period of prolonged darkness and cold that would devastate agriculture and lead to widespread famine. The resulting food shortages would trigger mass migrations and conflicts over resources, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Command? Currently, the VO is 350 words long. The situation is undeniably complex, and Dimon's warning has sparked debate among experts. Paul Beck, a renowned climatologist and professor at the University of Ottawa, acknowledges the gravity of the situation. Beck, known for his research on abrupt climate change and its societal impacts, sees clear parallels between the interconnectedness of the global climate system and the intricate web of global politics. He argues that just as a small perturbation in the climate system can trigger cascading effects with global consequences, so too can seemingly isolated regional conflicts escalate rapidly in our interconnected world. Beck cautions against simplistic analyses that portray the current geopolitical landscape as a new Cold War. He emphasizes the fluidity of alliances and the emergence of non-state actors, which complicate traditional power dynamics. He points to the rise of transnational terrorist organizations like ISIS and the growing influence of cyber warfare, which can disrupt nations and sow chaos without a single shot being fired. Adding fuel to the fire are recent comments by former President Donald Trump, who declared that the world is facing the most dangerous time in the history of our country. Trump, known for his bombastic rhetoric and unconventional approach to foreign policy, has long expressed concerns about the risks of global conflict. He has repeatedly criticized what he sees as America's weak stance on the world stage, arguing that the US needs to project strength and deter its adversaries. While Trump's pronouncements are often met with skepticism, his words reflect a growing sense of unease among many Americans. The world seems increasingly volatile, and the threats facing the United States, both foreign and domestic, appear more complex and intractable than ever before. The COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the rise of China, and the increasing polarization of American society have all contributed to a sense of anxiety and uncertainty